fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, crime, LGBT, thriller.
You have now entered the House of Mystery.
Welcome back into the House of Mystery. I'm Al Warren. Got Smoker Joe here.
Smoker Joe in the house just for this 1 hour with Dan. I'm going to go out and do some chickens. Smoker's waiting for me. It's that season.
Smoking chicken. I've never done that.
Well, you should. It's a delicacy.
Really?
Yeah. Get out there in the outdoors.
I'm outdoors a lot. But any special recipe or anything? Like
don't burn it.
Well, yeah.
Don't overcook it. That's the. Don't undercook it either.
Just cook it.
Yeah, well, let's see how much you want to season it. Do you want any barbecue on it? Do you want your skin crispy? What temperatures you go on? It's a science. You can go online and there's all these barbecue sites. And some of them are very helpful, but some of them are like, I'm very helpful and buy my sauce. Right? So that's like, no, thank you.
Oh, wow. That's something I have to look into. Yeah.
I'm looking at it for a new one, too, because my old one has served me well. At least my one before this burnt my house down, so I think it's a good idea to make sure I don't get one that can burn my house down.
No. You should write a book.
That's my advice. Don't burn your house down with your smoker.
Yeah, Smoker Joe. You should write a book.
People still get me when I post something that's like a smoking thing. Oh, they're letting you back by the smoker. 7 years ago, 8 years ago, statute of limitations over, guys. No more jokes about burning my house down.
They never forget. Speaking of never forgetting.
Yeah, so go back in history.
Yeah, back in history. I'm going to be talking to a new writer. This is his first novel, and he's also got some poetry behind him. So the book is called Rabbis of the Garden State, and it's Daniel Meltz. So thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, gents.
Well, before we get into the book, how did you get into the writing world? What made you do that insane thing?
I mean, I've always been writing since I was a little kid, so it's just something I've always done, and I wrote professionally as a technical writer for many years. And I was always writing poetry, always writing stories. Even when I was 6 years old, I wrote a story, and my mother sent it to Random House, and I got a rejection letter from Bennett Cerf. It wasn't Bennett Cerf personally, but it was from one of the secretaries. We're sorry to reject you, but at a very early age, I was always writing, just for the hell of it, just for the fun.
Yeah, well, no, that's good. But where did you get the, I don't know, what gave you the initiative to actually decide that you want to publish something as an adult? Like, what makes you think that you could publish and people would read it? What gave you that confidence?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I was always getting poetry published in journals, so that gave me confidence. And I got stories published in some journals. And then about really 30 years ago, I got an agent for actually for Rabbis of the Garden State and for another book too. So I did have some interest from the professionals. So that was encouraging. I mean, I had a really close connection with one agent who got it to a big house, but then the editor left the profession, and that was left to languish. But, I mean, I always had confidence as a writer, and so that's what kept me going.
So let's talk about this book here now, the Rabbi's book. What is the basic premise? What's it about?
Well, the book it's set in the 60s in New Jersey, Rabbis of the Garden State, and it's two parallel stories. One is about a kind of a force, a very attractive single mom who falls madly in love with her rabbi and causes a big scandal. And then there's a parallel story where her son goes to a yeshiva and he falls in love with his rabbi, who's a different breed of rabbi. He's a Talmudic scholar. He's less of a slickster. But so these stories kind of parallel each other. And it's a comedy as well. But it's funny you call yourself Man of Mystery because there is a certain mystery to it because it's told from the point of view of the young boy of 11. So he's really trying to figure out this obsession his mother has with the rabbi. He doesn't really understand that it's actually an affair. He just thinks the mother's kind of crazy and is acting very irrational.
So what do you do to get yourself ready or into the mind of an 11-year-old to write from that point of view?
I have a good memory for those times. And, the other thing, too, is, whenever I write anything, whether it's a poem or a story or a novel or anything, I always make sure that it has a real emotional kerpow to it, something that I really have a lot of feeling attached to. And so this was such a big scandal in our town about my mother cavorting with the rabbi. It caused so many intense feelings that it's really easy to recall all those feelings. And then when I went to yeshiva, when I was a little older, and I was madly in love with this brilliant rabbi, it caused so much passion and turmoil in me that I never forgot it. So it's great when you have all these feelings that you can attach your writing to.
So Dan, this sounds sort of autobiographical. Is that the? Oh
yeah, totally. It's totally autobiographical, but it's not really a memoir because it's all made up. I mean, if I told the story as it happened, it would be really boring. I really try to, put cliffhangers at the end of every chapter, create entertaining dialogue. I don't think it was that entertaining when it was happening, so, but it's definitely based on real stuff and real people, most of whom are dead.
Well, you said emotions in your previous answer too, so I was wondering what kind of emotions are you trying to draw out of the reader from your book, from the characters in your book?
I think a lot of it is about passion, especially sort of confusing passions, unrequited passion, and also there's a certain dramatic flamboyance of the mother, and it makes you feel very kind of shocking, and then you feel sort of sad for her. And it's also funny. I mean, there's something funny about it all. Just this mad craziness. The first part of the book is called 90 Miles an Hour, and it's really just the mother. Wherever she's going to do her shopping, to go to the pharmacy, she always makes a roundabout detour to go past the rabbi's house because she's just so obsessed with him that her car always takes her there. So it's really about passionate intensity.
About her car being passionate.
Yes, her car is very passionate.
Yeah. Auto drive.
It is kind of like that, yes.
So it sounds like this story has meant a lot to you and getting it out there and stuff. And what do you think it's done for you, or how has it changed you by actually writing it?
I mean, it made things a lot clearer to me. It put kind of a distance between me and that story. Sort of getting it outside of me made it seem like I had control of it. And because when I was a kid, I certainly did not have control of it. But also, I see people's responses. People are really enjoying it. I know a lot of it's my friends, but it's not just my friends. And it's thrilling to me to see people get a kick out of it.
Yeah, no, that's a good thing, especially the friends, because the friends are the toughest on you.
Yeah, that's true. Oh, that's true. Especially my partner. Forget it. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because they look for everything wrong.
Absolutely. That's for sure. I know. I said, can't you start with something positive?
Yeah.
Just to make me feel good.
No, positives out.
Right.
Yeah.
There's actually a couple of questions I could leave you to. But let me start with this first one.
Okay.
So was the historical part of it all from memory, or did you have to go back and research dialogues, environments, areas, or was it just simply from your past?
Yeah, I mean, as far as this actual, cultural references, I did, it's so easy to research to make sure, I mentioned a fudgesicle. Was a fudgesicle actually around in 1966? And was, just research sort of that stuff. Also, this rabbi, who's the main rabbi, he was sued by some of his parishioners at one point because he was a rabbi and a therapist, and it was a big scandal in the local paper in New Jersey. So I was able to find reports from the newspaper back then, and so that put a lot of the details in focus that I didn't really know. It wasn't like a story in the New York Times, but it was in Bergen Record in New Jersey.
Dan, did you books nowadays, you have to have a good person and a bad person. Who's the bad person in your book? Who's the protagonist?
The bad person is the bad rabbi. There's two rabbis. One is evil, and one is just a classic case. So he's not really a villain. But the real villain is the the philandering rabbi with his harem. And yeah, he's the bad guy.
Were you cautious about how you write negatively or bad guys with being rabbis? Do you have to be careful?
Well, not with the bad guy, because the bad guy was really charming. I mean, everybody loved him, so I made him very appealing. I didn't feel any kind of religious compunction about portraying rabbis in a bad light. Most of the characters, he's the only really bad guy. The closet case rabbi is just so messed up internally. He doesn't really know what he's doing. So, but there's also like the bad rabbi's wife is a very angry woman, and but she's portrayed sympathetically because she's so abused by her husband, but she keeps a stiff upper lip and tries to be pleasant, but she can't do it because she's just so pissed off that he's humiliating her left and right. And again, somehow it's also funny. I mean, it's not mockingly funny, but there's funny stuff in it.
It's in the title, so I'm assuming that New Jersey plays a big role in your book?
It does.
The setting?
Yeah, because New Jersey back then, it was very, all this Jewish suburbia and a lot of keeping up with the Schwartzes kind of stuff. But this family, it's a single mother household, so they're not as up on they're not as well-to-do as their neighbors. But I also feel like I'm addressing an underrepresented group, which is white trash Jews.
Are you the type of writer that hears your characters as you write them?
Oh yeah, totally. And and I love them to bits. I love all of them, even the jerky one. I love him.
Do they take control of the story ever, or do they take it off the tracks, so to speak?
Oh yeah, they do. And also, when I brought this book to the publisher, Ian Hensel of Writing Good Yarns, he really liked the book, but he thought the last quarter of the book needed work. And I was really grateful to him that he pointed a very important stuff out, because the first three parts are from the point of view of Andy, the narrator. And in the fourth part, I dropped his point of view. He said, "Why did you do that?" I was like, "I don't know. That was a big oversight of my part." So I redid that. But then he also said to me, "I noticed some sexual tension between the narrator and this bad rabbi's son." And when he pointed that out to me, talk about characters taking over. I hadn't really seen that before, but when I saw it, that really changed the whole trajectory of the book in a way that was really helpful to me, and to explore that tension between those two guys, because it was full of surprises for me. And they sort of did it. They took over.
They don't take over while you drive, do they?
Oh, no, and I don't drive much in Manhattan. We have the subway. We don't drive much around here.
Well, that's why you have people on the subway acting like that.
Right, exactly.
Hey, Dan, Al kind of asked this question, but I want to just ask it in a sort of different way. When you were writing about white trash Jews and things like that, were there things that you said, you know what, I just can't write that, or that's too far, or there's too much to be blowback? Did you sort of cancel yourself before it happened?
Honestly, no, because I know from writing teachers, and there was a writing teacher I had, this always stayed with me. He said, go to extreme, be extreme, because it's when you go to the extremes that you really find truth or humor or drama, and so I really tried. There are real extremes of degradation and poverty and total sleaziness that I think are important because they're true, and they just give a lot of color to the story, I think. So no, I don't avoid anything like that. I mean, there's even some conflict, anti-Semitic moments that I try and deal with in this too. I mean, not that I face that much anti-Semitism being in the greater metropolitan area here, but there are some incidents of that in the book.
Do you have your readers in mind then as you write, or do you just write and not care?
That is also a good question, because, you can do that more as a poet, I think. It's so important to me to keep the reader interested. And that's also where I think of, mystery, that there is a kind of, all the great novels, no matter whether they're called mysteries or not, are mysteries in a way, because the writer knows how to build suspense, whether it's Jane Austen or Agatha Christie or anything. They know how to keep you reading. And that's so important to me. So I do keep the reader in mind because I do not want the reader to be bored. That is so important to me. And also, even in poetry, I don't want to be so esoteric and highfalutin that people want to throw my poetry against the wall. I want to communicate. So I have the reader in mind all the time. And I also have my own pleasure in mind, too, because I want to write something interesting or beautiful or surprising. If ever I think of a cliche, no matter how ordinary, I get rid of it because that's where you find your real voice, what you really want to say, no matter what. I mean, there may be some cliches, but I really try to avoid them completely.
Do you find that is that the hardest part of writing, keeping the suspense building, or what was the hardest part of doing this?
I'll tell you what the hardest part was. This is the hardest part. The hardest part was towards the end. I had to, especially with a novel, I had to reread 300 pages worth of text like 105 times just to make sure it all coheres, that it all is, that I didn't screw up. There's no lapses in logic or there's, all that kind of stuff. And that was the hardest thing. But I developed this method that really helped me because I have a lot of wonderful friends that I really know very well. And I did this thing where whenever I started rereading, I pretended I was that person reading it. That so helped me see everything fresh. I pretended I was Dave. I pretended I was Amy. I pretended I was my partner. And it really got me through all those readings one after another. I was glad I figured that out.
Is that how you work out the dialogue? Do you work it out loud? Do you pretend to be the characters and have a voice for them and a picture in your mind of who they would be and kind of work it out that way, dialogue? Or
yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love writing dialogue. I find it so much fun to write dialogue and to have these people say, and also to have them say these things that I wish I had said in real life. Have these bold characters who say what's on their mind. I love doing that.
Okay, Dan, I got to ask the question. You've written a fiction novel about 60s and 70s Jewish New Jersey, and you have a poetry book coming out. So I got to figure out what are there any connections between the writings between those different kinds of genres, or is it just simply a different track altogether, different mindset, different part of your brain?
Well, they're both. I really love language, the sound of language, the rhythm of language. The novel is written with a certain rhythm. I don't know, people don't really mention it to me, but there is a cadence to the rhythm. I choose a certain amount of syllables for a word and not others. So I like the sound of the language. But poetry, you have a burst of inspiration, a feeling or question. What's so many things happen today, it feels like a poem. It's just a little burst of activity and insight. Of course, I always want to have a great ending of a poem. I really want to end with a bang. But a book is so much different because you really have to see it in such a gigantic way, and you have to keep it all in your head, keep it all straight. So, I mean, the feeling about when I'm writing them is so different. And the poetry is just a burst of something, and the book is like a couple years of something. It's fine to me.
I'd imagine. The poetry is. Well, I don't. So how can you explain writing poetry as compared to writing a novel? Is there a different process for you? Do you do something different? Do you sit?
Poetry, it's really mostly just about free association. You just pick up a pen or pick up the laptop and just start typing. Something comes out, and I usually feel this real urgency to write something. Whether it's a fight I had with my partner or something I learned in therapy or some way the park looks on April 22nd, there's something I just have to write about it, and usually comes out in a big burst. Or a moment I had. I remember in Connecticut a couple years ago, I met this arborist who was kind of making love to a tree. And I just felt I had such an intense conversation with this man about these trees, and I had to write about it. But with the book, you really have to think about the book for a long time. I do. I have to think about it for a long time before I really get going. It's a lot of planning.
But in the end, aren't both poems and books just trying to tell a story?
Yeah. Oh, that's...
You're a storyteller in both times?
Yes. Absolutely. They are. But, yes, they are.
So how's it different telling a story in a few verses and stanzas and having a beginning, middle, and end versus, as we know, 300 pages plus of story and dialogue, all that crap?
I mean, a poem. I mean, I can work on a poem for weeks sometimes, too, because I just want to get it right. I think the big difference to me is you don't really have to... I think, well, usually, okay, I can tell you this. When I write a poem, I am almost always surprised by the last line. When I write to the point where I come up with an insight that I didn't know. I was sort of writing a poem to learn something about what I'm really feeling or just trying to get to some truth. And then I get to it and I stop writing. And then I feel like I'm done. But the book, I want to know what the ending is ahead of time. And then I also want to sort of build to a climax right in the middle. So that when the reader you take the pages of the book and split them in half, I want the reader to feel something right at the middle as well, like you would in Dickens or like you would in some of the great novelists. And so I model myself after them. So that's very important. And also, the other thing, too, is, and because I remember somebody once said to me, well, you use this outline, this structure, doesn't that kill all spontaneity? And I'm like, no, it's the opposite. Because you're working in the structure, the surprises you come up with are so much deeper, and the surprises work on so many more levels because you have this structure. It's even more satisfying. Because the way the novel ended, I didn't know the novel was going to end that way. And then when it did, I was so delighted and surprised. I didn't know my book was going to end that way. So I burst into tears.
They all died. Okay, this is a particular thing. With the book, they have a lot more ground to cover, and they can get a lot more information. How is it you know that a reader is going to be able to pick up what you're putting down in a short poem? Like, is there a particular use of words or a particular way that you make that happen? Do you have to change it, edit it? Do you go through poems? Or is a poem written as you write it, it's done, no changes?
Right. I mean, it depends. Each poem is a little bit different. I mean, I don't do that much editing of poems in the way I do of a novel, but also poems for me are much easier to test because I've had many poems published. So I send out tons of poems all the time, and a very small fraction of them get published. And the ones that get published, I don't know if this is true or not, but to me it feels like, okay, they were publishable. I'm getting the feedback that these were the better poems. And in a way, I think that's true. I think it's true. And so most of the poems that went into this book, almost every one of them was published elsewhere ahead of time. It's hard for me to be objective about my own stuff. I mean, I have the feeling that it's good, but if they... another thing, too, is I do a lot of readings, a lot of poetry readings, and I can feel so clearly when a poem is not working, when I've lost the audience. It's just so obvious. So that's helpful, doing readings.
So you learned how to read the room, so to speak.
Oh, yeah, totally, yes.
Unlike the lady astronauts.
Oh, right, exactly, right.
Didn't know how to read the room, right? Well, so that's really interesting. So now that you're finished and it's done, and you look back at the book, it's published, was there anything that you would change about the book, or is it just perfect?
Some things here and there, a little bit, but really not much. I'm very satisfied with it. I really am. I especially because I lived with it for so many years, and I had such a my publisher was so useful to me, and my partner was really useful to me. Those two guys really helped, because my partner, he read it for the first time a few years ago, and he said, this main character doesn't do anything. And it's like, well, he's observing. He said, yeah, but that's not interesting. So that's where I really took off from in real life. In real life, I was just an 11-year-old listening to these things. That's not an interesting story. I made him a different person. I gave him a different personality. I made him much more of a troublemaker, much more of a pain in the ass. so that he would do things, and it made the story much more interesting.
Well, listen, are you into interaction with readers and fans and stuff like? Do you have social media? Do you have website? Do you have anything that people can find you at?
Oh yeah. I have a website, danielmeltz.com. I'm on Facebook, on Instagram, on Threads. Yes, I'm out there.
You're out there. Doing TikTok yet?
TikTok, no, but I had bunch of podcasts and interviews and conversations and things like this. So I'm even going to speak at a public library in the village in a couple of weeks. So I love doing all this stuff. It's so much fun.
Great. So people can get out there and see and interact. We're going to have your website and, of course, your book and everything else up on ours so people can find it easily. And the book, of course, is called The Rabbis of the Garden State, and it's Daniel Meltz. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks, Joe. It was wonderful talking to you both.
Thank you.
This has been a production of the House of Mystery Radio Show. To find out more about our show, guests, or hosts, go to our website at houseofmysteryradio.com.